Okay, so this is a quick Popcorn Junkies review of an Icelandic eco dark comedy. Not the genre that one would expect to see often at the cinemas. It's called Woman at War, directed by Benedikt Erlingsson, whose previous film of Horses and Men was a bit of a festival circuit success, critically well received Icelandic movie. This is a dark comedy set obviously in Iceland, and it follows the activities of a woman, Halla, who is essentially a sort of freedom fighter, if you like, an ecological freedom fighter who's trying to overcome and overwhelm the industrialists and industrial companies that are essentially powering and generating power across Iceland. So we open the film with a scene that it reminded me a little bit of Hawkeye's first scene in Avengers Endgame, where you see the meticulous preparation of a woman getting an arrow together and attaching wire to it and then firing the arrow over a pylon and then subsequently destroying the pylons. And so she's a sort of freedom fighter of sorts for the planet. And having travelled around Iceland, I thought a really wonderful part of this film was the way in which the planet, the Earth, the very sort of substrata of the planet, which you get a real sense in Iceland is very much sort of, you know, there on the surface. Hot rocks, geysers with hot water. It's freezing cold as well. There are glaciers. It's sort of static but moving. It's incredibly still but constantly evolving. And I thought this was a wonderful film in which the third character, you've obviously got Halla, who's the main character, who, as I say, is this freedom fighter, but then you've got this other enormous character that is Iceland, stands in for a metaphor, if you like, for the entire planet. This woman who is sort of conducting these sorties into the Icelandic tundra, wrecking a multinational conglomerate's hold on the energy supply and what have you. She's created quite a stir within the Icelandic news, so she's referred to as actually the mountain woman. You know, the country knows her, there are news reports, and you know, the government are really threatened by her activities. So on one level you've got this sort of woman dressed in a sort of knitted jumper, who looks like the kind of woman you'd see in a sort of cafe in Islington, charging around the outback, or the you know, the wilderness of Iceland, trying to rescue the earth really. And in so doing she leads this sort of double life, and a double life means that on the one hand, while she's mountain woman one minute, the next minute she's the sort of, I don't know, almost Women's Institute head of a local choir. She also has a twin sister who is a Buddhist slash yoga Buddhist type. So whilst on the one hand she's got this alter ego, she's mountain woman one minute, she's also put in an application to adopt a child from the Ukraine, and this application suddenly yields the possibility of her actually having a child. The actress who plays Halla is remarkable. I'll have a go at pronouncing her name. It's Halldóra Geirharðsdóttir. I'm not going to say that often, I'm just going to call her Halldóra. But Halldóra is amazing. There's a sort of calm determination, a real sort of understated, yet fully capable. She's sort of functional in one way, you know, she'll just strip off and she'll just do all these things, she just gets on with it. There's a sort of strange Icelandic sense of stock, and at one point there's this great farmer character who essentially takes her in and sort of provides some cover for her from the authorities, and he talks about where she came from, and he talks about her like he'd talk about livestock. Did you come from the something stock of people? Maybe we are cousins, we could be cousins. Such and such as father stood in as a father for so many others, meaning he had sex and sort of impregnated. You know, there's a sort of functionality almost, cattle-like functionality to where one comes from and where one's going. And I liked that about her character. You know, she wasn't overly emotional. She wasn't riven with sort of great long moments of deep soul searching. She knew what it was she wanted to do in terms of the environment. She knew what she wanted in terms of being a mother, and she just wanted to get on with it. And so there was a real sort of solid determination to her character, which I thought was really empowering actually. It's a very strong, you know, it's interesting to see a woman who looks like an average middle-class woman being the sort of star and also slightly the action hero of this film. I mean, there's no two ways about it. She's running around an incredibly inhospitable landscape, risking her own life, dodging drones, dodging helicopters. I mean, there's a fabulous scene where she's essentially hunted by a drone and by a helicopter. And I was reminded of all those moments in like Lord of the Rings and what have you, and you sort of think, God, this literally is this woman at war. But all the time, there's this really unique device that they use throughout the film. And this device is earmarked almost within the first sequence, not the first shot, but the first sequence, after she's pulled down or disrupted one of the electric pylons, is that the musical soundtrack is a brilliant combination of sort of folksy brass band, I don't know if it's indigenous Icelandic music, coupled with Ukrainian choir or vocal music. And every time the music starts, somewhere in every single scene, the camera would say sort of past Halla, and then it would reveal a threesome, you know, a sort of trombone, a tuba or trombone, and a pianist and a drummer. And they'd be in shot, and they would accompany the drama with their music. And I thought, at first, it made me roar with laughter the first time. The only time I've ever seen it done was a Mel Brooks film called High Anxiety, where, and I think actually Young Frankenstein, they might have done it, where, you know, the music's getting more and more intense, and then suddenly he pulls back a curtain and there's the orchestra sort of working away like mad. So it was very funny in one sense, but in another, they kind of worked like the chorus, if you like. They were the sort of musical chorus of the film. And so they, on the one hand, it was a really sort of obviously surreal and kind of magic realist twist to a film about a woman doing something very real. And then you'd have these moments of musicality where, you know, they'd look at her and sometimes the music would pause, and then they'd watch her and they'd think about her, and you'd see them almost interacting with what was playing out before them. And I thought it was a really clever, I mean, you know, at first you think this isn't going to work, it's a good gag, is it a bit too much? And you did find yourself trying to think in every scene as music started to play, where on earth are they going to situate the pianist? I think it managed to make it both a real story, but it managed to make the story become something like a fable or a parable, or not a fairy tale, because I thought it was very much engaged with the whole ecological concerns of saving the planet and things like that. So on the one hand, the message is very real and it's very relevant after Extinction Rebellion and all of the demonstrations that are going on at the moment. So it's a really important message, but I think in a weird way, this slightly stylistic device and slightly surreal device allowed us to view the film as a fable, and so therefore it became something that we could take bigger meanings from it. So obviously in one way you've got the drama of will she, won't she be found out, caught by the authorities and what have you. Some very innovative ways that she kind of disguised herself wearing a sort of cutout Nelson Mandela mask, so that when the drone came down and she looked up, there was Nelson Mandela. Obviously not, it was a Nelson Mandela mask looking back. It was beautifully shot. And again, going back to what I was saying at the beginning, the personality of the land was a really key part of this film. There were a number of scenes where Halla would lie on the floor and for quite a sort of extended period of time would sort of almost touch and kiss and commune and be one with the planet. And I thought they were really beautiful moments. I thought they made me want to go straight into the garden and put my head in the grass and just lie there. You know, going back to this idea that the planet or Iceland or the countryside in this film is another sort of character. At one point when she's been out in the cold for too long and she needs to be looked after, and she finds this farm, she intercepts the farmer again who's already rescued her once, or hidden her once. You know, he's carrying her and you think, God, she's going to die of hypothermia. And then of course you forget that there are these hot springs everywhere. So he just sort of places her in this stream. She lies down and the heat sort of brings her back to life. And the character of the farmer, who is played by, I'm going to try and pronounce his name too, Johan Sigurðsson played the farmer. He was brilliantly underplayed, very funny. The comedy in this is so subtle that you don't feel you're sort of being taken towards the laughs, or you're taking, you know, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not a laugh out loud film, but there are moments, I probably sat throughout the whole film with a wry smile on my face all the way through it, just thinking this is sweet, this is funny, this is fun. And so I won't give away, there's a massive twist towards the end. I won't let you know what happens to Halla. I won't let you know whether she succeeds in her mission to disrupt the planetary, intergalactic, multi-corporate destruction of the Earth. I won't let you know what actually happens there. But there's a very, I thought, very clever twist at the end, which I didn't see coming until a little bit too late. There were a couple of moments where I felt it could have ended, and I wished it had ended. And again, without saying what actually happens at the end, I don't want to spoil that. But it was a film that I thought could have had a good sort of 15 minutes trimmed off the end. But I thought this was a film that once again really illustrated that curious, I mean, as I say, me and Nadia have been to Iceland, and there's a really curious sort of functionality, but a real sense of humour underlying the Icelandic. Let me just show you. In fact, I just realised. Let me just show you. This is a good example. Do you remember when there was the enormous volcanic eruption of, I can't for the life of me name the volcano, but this is a little sort of coaster. Don't fuck with Iceland. We may not have cash, but we've got ash. That just about sums up their sense of humour. And in a sense, that sense of humour is at the heart of this. It's like, don't fuck with us because we're fucking nuts. If you think of Björk, the singer, Icelandic, there's a sort of fairy tale-like charm coupled with a sort of boulder-sized ability to crush you, and that in a weird way is what the character of Halla is. As I say, she was a very sort of unemotional, she wasn't vulnerable at all. Even when things aren't going her way, she wasn't vulnerable. Even when issues kicked in around her and her child, you know, she wasn't that vulnerable. So for a film where the lead character isn't really emoting too much, it's amazing that you go on an emotional journey at all, but you do. I think it was a very amusing, witty, I wouldn't say a dark comedy, I'd say it was a green comedy.
For more film and family fun, don't forget to click the subscribe button and make sure to click the bell to never miss an update.